All right. Thank you so much for being here today, Dana.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Amazing. So I want to jump right in. I've heard you talk about, or in your workout in the world, you talk about connection as the next frontier in health. So I want to know everything. Like, what led you to that realization? Was there a personal moment when you recognized that this is maybe the thing that was missing? Connection? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I've been somebody who's been kind of fit my whole life. I don't know. I think it was just for me. I've had a lot of energy throughout my whole life, so I found
The
myself
listeners are
going to
like,
the
sucks to be you, Dana. Rough.
Ex-
Uh-huh.
Exactly. I guess I've actually realized now that I've gotten a bit older, like what a privilege that is, like what a blessing it is. Because as I've worked with clients in personal training and health coaching over the years, I realized like that's just not true for a lot of people. Like it is really hard for some people to like want to get into the gym and stuff. Whereas like I feel blessed that that energy just sort of had me going because I felt like I had to expend that energy anyway. So it just kind of like had me in the gym or doing something active my whole life. Right. But it was, yeah, I think a lot of us end up on our like spiritual journey or figuring out our path through kind of like hitting maybe what feels like a rock bottom. So
Mhm.
even though felt like I was always kind of like physically fit, it was around like leading up to COVID and then kind of right after the COVID shutdowns, I just realized like even though I was physically fit, I just felt like I was completely lost and I felt like my brain wasn't working. I was struggling with a lot of things. So that's when it kind of really opened the door to me about realizing there's a lot more than just our physical fitness and starting to really want to learn about tapping into our nervous system and all the things, meditation, things that are the full picture of health. And as I did that, I started stepping away from really drinking alcohol. It's not like I never drink alcohol, but I had done quite a few years of kind of the typical partying and business drinking and stuff like that. And once I stopped drinking as much, I started really wondering, like, how do you keep connecting with people outside of the bars and the typical kind of like socialization, happy hour, and nightclubs and nightlife that people connect around? And I'd done CrossFit for a long time, and I kind of started realizing through that like there seems to be this like shared sense of community and camaraderie when you're doing something challenging together. So I think a lot of people feel this through group fitness classes is like you go into this space, you see the same faces, and it's not just about seeing the same faces, it's that you're like for a small amount of time putting yourself into an acute state of stress. And somehow there's like some magic that happens when
Battle
you put yourself
buddies.
into an
Yeah.
acute, yeah, exactly, that you really connect. And so that was kind of like the initiation of it, where this like idea started to be planted, and then it's kind of evolved from there.
Yeah. Was there, I mean, I love that question of how do you connect? And I was thinking about this today because what was I coaching someone on it? But like as adults, right? How do you make friends and how do you connect? And oh, and just the power of having those people. It's coming back to me now. Like how you have those powerful connections. And for the people who have it, I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. But how do you do it? And the like the answer my brain offered up was buy it. Like sometimes if you don't have it, like literally buy it. And here's why I thought of this is I think of like when I signed up for even coaching certification. Like I'm a licensed therapist, but I went back and got certified as a life coach. And I'm so glad I did because I found a group of people who are like-minded. They're struggling with the same stuff. They're challenging in the same ways. Or I think about right before I hit record, we were talking about yoga retreats in Mexico. And I think about signing up for a yoga studio and the people that we have there, or even signing up for coaching or a therapist. It's like sometimes, or to your point, CrossFit. Sometimes if you don't have it in your out in the wild, pay for it. Go find
Yeah.
it. Like, don't shy away. It's like the adult version of like sororities and fraternities, right? You bought your friends in college. Like now, sometimes, and I think I used to have like maybe an aversion to that, but I just want to offer that up that, yes, adults, like sometimes it might be you go pay to join something. And from there, then you kind of naturally find like who are those people you naturally gravitate towards. And maybe then they do
Yeah.
become connections even outside of the CrossFit and the battle buddies and the yoga or whatever it is. Those can become those connections outside of that space. So do you have any more that's where my brain went, but do you have anything that you would offer up for somebody who's like, yeah, I'm an adult, maybe I'm in a new city, or maybe I've gone through some life changes, like, oh, I don't drink anymore, or maybe I don't work out anymore because something, something. Like, what are you, like, how do you encourage people to cultivate, like where they find it? How do we make friends, Dana, is the real
How do we
question.
make friends?
Where are my friends at?
Yeah.
Where are
Well,
my friends? I used to be like, I'm taking applications, taking applicants since I've moved to South
f-
Texas and I don't have
yeah.
any friends. I will be taking applications. So, what would you say to us?
Well, fortunately, I think we're not the only ones asking this question and the only ones kind of searching for this. So there is like a big movement happening around this. So if you're not really into going to the gym or doing something that's like high intensity workout, whether it's like a Barry's boot camp or even a yoga class, there are all sorts of places popping up that have like sauna cold plunge or it's like breath work or meditation. And those are also things that like without necessarily having to move your body, you are actually still putting yourself into that kind of acute state of stress, like a very acute sympathetic response.
I
And you could just
hate
be sitting
cold
in the sauna or
plunge.
sitting in the cold. I know. But we know the magic of it, right? It's like, it's literally, it's like whatever the stimulus is, it's that you do put your body into this sort of like altered state of an acute sympathetic state. And it's through the release of all those like the dopamine, the adrenaline. That's what kind of like really brings you into the present. And then also makes you open to social connection, right? So yeah, even if your thing isn't high intensity workout, definitely I know CrossFit is certainly not for everybody. I don't even really do it anymore. I feel like I got a lot of like value from
I
the
aspire to be the
functional
people who
complex
do.
movements.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I aspire.
exactly. But yeah,
Hold on, but
there's
you
there's
said
places popping up.
something. I want to go back. I know I'm like talking over you. I get so excited. But you
That's
said
okay.
something about that like connected the dots for me, or a dot for me, or two of them is yeah, I hate cold. I was just even telling you, I'm like, I am not mad about being in South Texas where it's hot because I hate cold. So
Yeah,
cold plunge, cryo, going in the freezer cabinet, none of that is exciting to me. But it's interesting. I mean, I've done it, I do it. But you said that discomfort can bring you into the present moment, which can
yeah,
make you more open. And then you said also, and more open to social connection. Because I'm also as you said that, I was thinking about the people who identify as introverts, maybe. And you're like,
yeah.
the idea of being in a group is going to put me in my sympathetic nervous system. I don't need a cold plunge, right? Like there's, right? And so the idea of, I want you to say more about that part where we get into the present moment and maybe where that through
Yeah.
the discomfort, we come into presence and that opens up something. Walk us through that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us have experienced this like time dilation or time slowing down when we feel a rush of adrenaline. So whether that's like you're driving and you see a car accident or anything that really kind of like makes you feel a rush of adrenaline, there's this thing that happens that oftentimes can feel very palpable where you do feel suddenly like very drawn into the moment. Anything else you might have been thinking about kind of disappears and you really, whether you ask for it or not, are suddenly kind of like pulled into the present moment. So that's that rush of epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are just other words for adrenaline and neuroadrenaline. And there's something just magical about that when we get a rush of that, it really does bring us into the present moment. And so there's two things that can happen with that. If you're not used to that and you're not honing that through doing meditation or something else, if this is totally new to you, it might kind of bring you into the present moment, but you're not going to really like stay there. You're just going to kind of, it's going to happen and then you're going to go back out. But if this is like a skill or a practice you've been cultivating, suddenly you'll kind of realize like, oh, I'm where I've been trying to get through all this meditation and stuff. And it was caused by this release of these neurotransmitters that have brought us into the moment. And then again, I think the others on the flip side of that, or at the end of that, is what opens us to social connection is whatever it is that we've just done. It's usually like we've just overcome something challenging. So again, if it is like, even if it's a yoga class or something, like you've moved your body, you've sweated out, you've done something that you should feel proud of. Like I just came and I showed up and I did this thing. Or if it's sauna, like I'm also not a huge fan of the cold. I grew up in Colorado and I don't live in Colorado anymore. So, um,
Like I live where it's 75 and sunny all the time. So got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I even take off from LA come about this time of year and spend most of like the fall and winter down in Sayulita, Mexico. So I'm really always chasing where I can go to the beach and be warm. But even in a sauna, like if you stay in a sauna long enough, you kind of hit this point where you're like, I really want to get out. This is uncomfortable. And if you stay in it and you get out and whether you're an introvert or not, like you usually get out and it's all these like chemicals that have just dumped into your body, going to have brought you into the present, and B, you're going to afterward be like, wow, I just did something challenging and I overcame it.
Yeah, so now I'm hearing, thank you for that example, because I'm thinking of the connection, not just the social connection, but that self connection, right? Like when you come into that present moment and you come home to yourself. And
Yeah.
You said something interesting about if you're not familiar with what's happening neurochemically and in your nervous system in that discomfort, our tendency would be to move past it, move on from it. And so I want to hear more about it sounds to me that maybe I don't know if I'm making this up, but if where you're going is so is the invitation to like reorient our relationship to that discomfort, stay with it. Um, Tell me more about that because I feel like there was something inside of that that if you don't rush away from the discomfort, I feel like there's something magical that's going to happen there. So tell me what that is.
Yeah, exactly. So where this really came for me was like kind of going back to my own story. It was like I'd always been fit, and then I started doing these things like sauna, cold plunge a few years ago. You know, I'm like many people that got was listening to Huberman early on a few years ago, and these are just things I enjoy anyway. But it was when I met my co-founder, my partner in our business that we ended up opening. She introduced me to breath work. You know, along the lines of kind of a Wim Hof 3-part circular breath without holds. But that was really the first time I had done anything like that. I had been aware of and studying breath through XPT, which is Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese's like performance breathing program. And I was always kind of thinking about that through an athletic lens, about like trying to regulate our heart rate and keep it lower and doing nasal breathing as long as possible. But when I met my co-founder Rave, that was the first time I had done this kind of like conscious connected breath, where you're laying down, you're doing this circular breath, your eyes closed, and you're really being drawn into the moment. And that for me, as somebody at the time who hadn't practiced a lot of meditation or really done a lot to try and bring myself into the moment, was really uncomfortable at first. And I think that is really uncomfortable for a lot of us as we start trying to practice that. But over time, I started seeing the value of it, that like once I would actually try to do this and be in the moment and feel the things that would come up, I just really felt all the benefits afterward of like sometimes nothing really would happen. I just felt like I had kind of laid there and breathed. And then sometimes I would have these completely almost psychedelic type experiences. And I would come out and realize that the people next to me had also had this really profound experience. And some people might be crying, and the way that you connect afterwards. So I think I started to kind of like draw the dots together that there is something magical, yeah, when you learn to like sit with the discomfort and you're willing to like stay present throughout it and then come out on the other side. And then if you do that in a group with people, yeah, there is sort of this like very magical thing that happens with connection.
Okay, I want to hear more about this breath work. I did not plan it this way, but the way the episodes are
Okay.
going to come out is the episode right before it was I did not know I was going to talk to this woman about nasal breathing for 40 minutes, but there we were. 40
Yeah.
I was deep. I was like, tell me more. She was a speech pathologist. I did not know this was the direction we were going. Um, but now I'm captivated by I think about breath work in a whole different way. And you mentioned nasal breathing and maybe tell me more, and maybe this is this part of the work that you do in your business with this breath work, and some of these kind of altered state experiences. Take us down the rabbit hole. Tell me about this.
Yeah, exactly. So where it all started, where like Alchemize House kind of came from, was once I met my co-founder. She was the one who was really doing this kind of circular 3-part breath, which is anywhere from like a 20 to 25-minute experience, or on like the far end of things, some people do this for up to a couple hours. And we started hosting these experiences where we would do breath work together and cold plunge. We were both kind of doing separately some health coaching. She was doing some women's empowerment coaching. And once we started kind of like working together, we really realized there was kind of this synchronicity with the way that we taught. You know, she really embodies, we really both embody, I guess, our what you would expect of her, the feminine energy, and me, kind of the masculine. So she really kind of brings people into the present, into the moment, and the softening and the feminine. And then I'm always kind of more intrigued and interested by the physiology of what's happening. Like when we are breathing this way, what's actually happening with our blood, with our pH levels in the blood? Why are we feeling all this tingling and stuff? So we started hosting these events where we would do breath work. And oftentimes this kind of breath work does appeal more to women, it seems like. I feel like men are sometimes reluctant to come into these spaces because it can bring up a lot of feelings. And if you've seen like videos of this kind of breath work, sometimes you do see people crying and sharing afterward that it was like this very emotional experience,
Well,
right?
tell me, is what this called? Like, because I went to this thing, and I mean, this is not like a
Mhm.
promotion. I think it was called like Vitality, like with a W, not a
Oh
V.
yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah, I know
Uh-huh.
that. Yeah,
And it was in San Antonio. And one of my girlfriends, I didn't know what I was getting into. Listen, somebody invites me. I'm like, connection, let's go play. I had no idea what I was signing
yeah,
up for, which is probably
yeah.
good because I might have been like, I mean, people are screaming, people are crying. It's a whole situation, it's a whole scene. Is
It's a
this what
whole
you're
thing.
talking about? Is this the experience that y'all do? Okay. Tell us because I
Yeah,
didn't know, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't really know I was just in it to win it. Like, let's go, whatever we're doing, I'm here. Very present. But like, tell us what it's about. Like, what's the point? What's the purpose? What's the possibility? And is this the same thing as holotropic breathing? Or are these separate things? So that's like 15
it
questions in one. You've got this, Tina.
all yeah, all good. So essentially, the style of breathing or the way the mechanisms of how we're breathing is similar to holotropic breathing. Yeah, if you're doing a holotropic breathing protocol, that's where you would very likely be doing this for like an hour plus. So it essentially is like a three-part breath, where if you're thinking you would breathe first, kind of really down into your belly, and then the second part of the breath would be up into your chest. So then, and then a soft exhale out through the mouth. And so a lot of times when people think about this, they sort of incorrectly say that we're like over oxygenating the blood. And that's not totally true because if a lot of us learned during COVID, when you take your like blood oxygen saturation, like we're already typically at like 95, 96% blood oxygen saturation. So what happens when we're breathing in this way is we're actually just blowing off a lot more carbon dioxide, and that changes the pH level of the blood and it makes it a lot more alkaline. So that can cause all these like tingling sensations. It releases all this rush of adrenaline. And I'm curious to hear your experience. I'll finish what I'm going to say here, but it's like, sometimes that's all you might feel is like a little bit of tingling or whatever, or like you might feel cold. Like there's quite a few sensations that can happen. And that's usually because of the changing pH of the blood, from it going from alkaline to more acidic, especially if you start doing any sort of like breath holds like that. But sometimes because of this, people can tap into like totally altered states too. Like I myself have had very transcendental experiences. I would even say like more powerful than some of the like true psychedelic experiences I've had. And I've definitely witnessed that with other people too. I'm curious about your experience when you
Yes.
went. Yeah, like
Well,
what?
so it's been a few years, a couple, three. I mean, it was before COVID, I think. Is that
Okay.
possible? Yeah. So it's been a while. But here's what was interesting. I got scared. I will tell you, like when we started
Hmm.
doing it, I will listen, let's go down the rabbit hole for a second. So I was in a car accident one time in 2004 and I hit my head. Um, and I had this like altered state of experience. And so now like my nervous system can get very fearful, even if it's like gas mask at the dentist. Like I don't feel, I get scared. So clearly I'm not a good,
Yeah.
we are not going to be a good drug user over here. Okay. Altered
Okay. Okay.
state.
Yeah.
I'm like, is my brain gonna come back? Because that's what was not happening after the car accident. I was like, I couldn't hold on. So all of that to say, when I was there, I could feel myself like getting into an altered state of consciousness. So I noticed I'd be like, I'm gonna open my eyes for a second. Like I would like ground myself into the room
Yeah.
because I got scared. And then it was more like yoga nidra, with that sort of experience where you're
Mhm.
like, I'm not asleep, but I think I fell asleep, right? Like where I can kind of hear him talking, but if afterwards, like the women I was there with were like, the part where he was talking about this, and I was like, absolutely, I have no idea what you're talking about. We were not. And
Yeah.
then when it had been like 3 hours, I was like, there's no way. There's no way, right? So I know there was a little bit of like, so I'm like, it was like altered light. I don't know, right? Because
Yeah.
I got
Fair.
scared. I was
Fair.
like, we
Fair.
need to, it's like still holding on to control. I don't know. We were not, it was before coaching. It was before I had coaching in my life. I was scareder then.
Yeah.
It's got to
Yeah.
work. I was more
Yeah.
fearful. Yeah. So is that,
That
I
totally
mean,
makes sense.
yeah, right. I'm like, is that common? Is that I'm not the only one? No. My real question is because I would love to do it again. We've talked about like if he comes back, like I'm gonna do it big girl this time. I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna really go for it and let myself go, even though I'm sweating just telling you that. So that tells me I'm still a little scared, apparently.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe back to that question of like, what's the possibilities and like what's the goal? What's the like healing opportunities? What's the value of doing it?
Yeah, I've heard some breathwork teachers say that like one breathwork session can be like, oh, and I don't remember the exact number they use, but like thousands of hours of talk therapy.
It's like
So,
ayahuasca.
I,
That's what they say about like 20 years of therapy. Also, we have not done that. I can, I'm terrified. I'm like, I'm never coming back. I'm going to go psychotic. Again, as a licensed, I'm like drug-induced psychosis. What if my brain never comes back? Not that I'm trying to fear
yeah.
monger. Everyone who's about to go do their ayahuasca is like, well, hold on. That's not, but there's obviously value here. So carry on. I'm gonna minimize my terror over here. It's fine of losing my
Yeah,
mind.
essentially. I mean, I think whether, as personal anecdotes or not, whether we use psychedelics, I think a lot of us are starting to see that there is a lot of value and there's a
Yeah.
lot of studies showing that some of these compounds are very valuable for healing, whether it's
Yep.
like MDMA for PTSD, psilocybin for depression, a lot of
Yep.
these things. So I think they're obviously they are seeing that like when you can kind of like open your brain up to new neural pathways and kind of get out of the default mode network, which is kind
Yeah.
of what these substances help you do. This is what breathwork can help you do too, essentially, whether it's altered light like you said or altered like deep full send into like where did I just go.
Mm-mm.
Essentially you're basically priming your brain to be open to new ways of thinking, right? And oftentimes that is really where we get stuck, right? And just like the name of your podcast, Unblock, like what can we do to kind of help unblock us from the things that keep us stuck in our patterns, right? And so
Right.
anything that you can introduce, whether it's a psychedelic, whether it's your own breath, whether it's contrast therapy through hot and cold, like there are things that kind of can shock your body into a new state that you might not be used to feeling. And if that helps you kind of get unstuck, then that's really where the magic lies, right?
Yeah, and yeah, as you're saying it, I'm thinking a lot of the work, I mean, as a mindset coach, I do a lot of conscious, quote unquote, conscious thought work to get people unstuck. And a lot of it, work that I'm doing is with the unconscious also, right? And that's kind of what you're talking about when
Mhm.
you can get those neural networks to open. If you are consciously, I mean, the number of times, like for the listeners, just to think, tell me the last time you said something like this, like cognitively, I can get behind that, but some part of me is very resistant to it, right? This is the value of these kinds of work, whether it's unconscious work, embodied, which is again, that's embodied work, it's breath work, it's psychedelics. You're really trying to get your unconscious, your subconscious, and your conscious mind kind of going in the same direction. And that's when you can really unlock. That's when you can really get unblocked, right? We'll go back to the podcast titles.
Yeah.
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 So we're doing the breath work. Is that kind of the main focus of, is that what I already Alchemize House?
Alchemize House.
Alchemize House.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that the work of the biz is to do breath
That
work?
is really where, yeah, that is really where it started, at least with me and my co founder. It's kind of evolved over time where we realize, I like what you said too earlier about relationships. It's not only about like connecting with others, but it's about like coming home and connecting with yourself. And that's something we often say about like why Alchemize House exists is it's a
Mm.
space to develop deep connections, not only with yourself, or not only with others, but with yourself, essentially. Right. And so it started with us as teachers of breathwork as
Mhm.
kind of like the main offering, but we're also big fans of yoga. We're big fans of Pilates. We're big fans of other like movement. And so now what we call ourselves like a social wellness club. So essentially we have classes from breathwork, like we've been talking about, to mat Pilates, to yoga, to meditation. And then we have a big sauna, a cold plunge that can fit 6 people at a time, which again, I know like there's a lot of people that are not big fans, but there is also something pretty powerful about doing something very challenging that you really don't want to do when you can do it together with somebody.
I
So
was gonna say
instead
I've
of like
never
a
seen it.
single,
Is this common? Like the like multiple like a cold plunge party? I would be much more motivated if I had friends in the cold plunge with me. I've never seen the
absolutely.
places that I've been to, it was you're going in by yourself. But is this a new thing or is this commonplace?
I think we're still a little bit ahead of the curve here in having like a bigger cold plunge. There are definitely a lot more places that are popping up that have kind of like bigger cold plunges because I think people are also kind of realizing the power of being able to do this together. The first place I went to was a place in San Diego called Breathe Degrees. And that was a place that really kind of offered this too, is like you would go in, you would do these big 5 rounds of Wim Hof style breathing, which is exactly
Mhm.
kind of the breath we're talking about, but with big breath holds in them too.
Mhm.
Wim Hof is probably somebody that I'm sure has come up in some of your podcasts
Yeah.
before, but you know, he's kind of a pioneer in this space.
Well, and
And
for
then
those
they
who
had a
don't
big
know,
like,
like, because the reference to Wim Hof breathing and the three-part, you kind of walk through, but if someone was like, okay, if I'm going into this, I'm doing Wim Hof breathing, the quick snapshot of that is what?
yeah, you're going to go into what feels like a yoga studio. You're going to be laying on your back. Ideally, you're going to put an eye mask over your eyes to really also aid and add to the like going internal experience. And you're going to be doing this three-part breath. So it's going to be kind of a deep breath into your like lower belly, under your diaphragm, and then like a little bit of a secondary breath up more into your like chest space, and then just like a soft exhale. And you're just going to be doing that over and over and over again. And then with specifically with Wim Hof style, you are going to then be doing breath holds. So at some point after they've done a certain number of repetitions of the breathing, they're going to have you exhale all of your air and then hold your breath at the bottom, which might also sound terrifying to somebody if you've ever thought about holding our breath. Typically, we're probably going to do like a big inhale and then hold our breath. But this is actually, they're going to have you exhale all of your air and hold your breath at the bottom and just totally relax. And then you'll pick up and go back into that breath style. And they would do 5 rounds in this particular case like that. And that's going to get your body all feeling tingly and numb. And by the time you go and get into the cold plunge, it's not going to be quite as challenging because all that adrenaline and everything that just dumped into your body also sort of has like a little bit of a muting effect on your nerves, on your pain tolerance. So by the time you go get in the cold, like you're already going to be a little tingling and feeling like it won't be as challenging as it would be if you were to just jump straight in.
How long do you do the breath work part before you go get in the cold plunge?
The active breathing part that we typically do in our practice at Alchemize House is like 20 to 25 minutes. So this is also paired with music. There's pairing it with evocative music, usually not with that many lyrics, but that kind of also takes you on a journey. It starts out like a little bit slower pace, and there's going to be kind of a crescendo that's going to take you up to this peak period in both the breathing and the music, and then it's going to kind of like tail back off, and then you usually end with like 7 to 10 minutes of returning to your normal breath and just coming back into the space, back into your body. Especially if you did have this really kind of profound experience, you can kind of have this like total out of body experience, and then you're kind of grounding back into the space.
And then I'm like guided imagery. And then from there, we're in our yoga clothes and then we go jump into a cold plunge. We don't jump. I don't know. Maybe we gracefully ease in, whatever we do. We go into a cold
Yeah.
plunge.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So we have like changing rooms. So you know, if people didn't already come with their like bathing suit under their yoga clothes, people can then go change. And then we usually take people over and we try to ask if it's been anybody's like first time. We'll try to take the first timers together and we'll bring them over and we'll actually then go through a little bit of guidance on how they should breathe in a cold plunge as well. Because if you've done this, you've probably had this experience. Anyone who's done any sort of cold plunge, like if you're unfamiliar with it, you get in and it really feels like it takes your breath away. You might go from breathing totally normal to like you get in the water and suddenly like the reaction is you're going to be like, and that's going to send you right back into that like very sympathetic state, right? So what we encourage people to do is back to nasal breathing as we were talking about earlier. Excuse me. We're going to have you breathe in through your nose as long as you can. So even if that's only at first like a 2-second inhale, and then we're going to ask you to like lengthen your exhale, because when we're exhaling is when we're actually like turning our body back to that parasympathetic state and we're slowing our heart rate down. So it's kind of cool. I wear like a Whoop, but if you wear any sort of like wearable, an Aura ring or an Apple Watch where you can like watch your heart rate while you're doing it, you can actually see that while you're exhaling is typically when your like heart rate will like dip and go back down. So what we try to encourage people to do is to treat the cold plunge like any sort of stressful state in life. Like your body doesn't, the physiological response to stress is the same, whether it's like cold water, you just got in a fight with your partner, you just got cut off in traffic, like the physiological response in your body is the same. So the cold or any of these, like in the sauna, and learning how to breathe in these moments is really good like practice for how to do this at any time in life. So because when we get stressed, no matter what the cause is, you're going to have the same response. Your heart rate is going to go up, your pupils are going to dilate, you're going to start perspiring. If we can really learn how to like reset that and bring our heart rate down. So what we try to tell people is like, okay, long inhales through the nose and even longer exhales. And over time, like right when you get in, that might still be quick. It might look like, and then if each time you're doing that, you can think about, okay, a little bit longer inhale and then try and double the length of your exhale. You can actually get people who have like never even done a cold plunge before to within 30 seconds, they're down to where they're like breathing completely normally, right?
How long do they stay in the cold plunge?
We always like to tell people that it's like totally up to them. We kind of say to target as a goal like 2 minutes, because 2 minutes is kind of the place where you will have gotten to the point where probably like the pain no longer feels like it's increasing. It's actually like you're like, oh, I could stay in here longer. But everyone's journey is their own, and like we certainly don't want to have anyone do anything that they don't feel comfortable with. So like the experience is going to be uncomfortable, but it's about kind of tapping into like what is uncomfortable versus like what is actually not good for me right now, and finding
Right.
kind of that sweet spot. Yeah.
Well, I'm also curious about like, do you, because you mentioned the whoop, so do you look at like your heart rate variability and do you notice the change that when you do something like this, what that might look like?
I do. So I notice when I am down in Sayulita, spending more time at our space, that my heart rate variability does start to like incrementally improve over time.
Mhm.
There is kind of this great irony of like owning and running a wellness business where most people go to regulate their nervous system, and it's also simultaneously the thing that causes me the most stress. So it's like, be, it's like
Yeah.
being at the space and trying to take it in and receive it the way that our clients
Mhm.
do, and not let it be like for the whole first year, I don't think I had really actually spent that much time there and allowed myself to receive the magic of the space, like as if I were a customer. And then it was at the beginning of this year, I was down there and I spent kind of the first 7 days of the year down there, like just working from our space and really kind of like receiving the magic of it. And it was one of the best beginnings of a year of like ever given to myself, of just like being on this beautiful rooftop in Mexico, being able to like do a yoga class, then later in the afternoon, when I was feeling a little bit sluggish, like go do some sauna and some cold plunge instead of having more caffeine. And within that week, yeah, I was able to look at my heart rate variability on my Whoop and just see it like big spike going up. So yeah, these are things that you can really see the difference in if you do them consistently.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to hit on what you just said there about that idea of owning, and I think that's such an amazing juxtaposition where you're like, I am literally running a wellness center and I am stressed out about it. So I want to like I mean, because a lot of people are probably coming to you because they are experiencing stress, and well, I'm making assumptions, like people who are experiencing stress and they want to find more calm and like more nervous system regulation. And like I just wrote a whole book called In Pursuit that is about like how can you actually be in pursuit of big dreams, big goals, and not feel totally stressed out and dysregulated the whole time. And so I'm
Yeah.
curious as a business owner in this wellness space, how you can bridge that gap, like where you can actually experience, I mean, like again, this is like nirvana, but like how we can experience as much presence and peace while still being in the 3D world where there are things like payroll and overhead and things. What are your like go-to things that help you kind of stay in that centered place?
It's funny. It's a very like meta answer, but I've realized it's like it's literally just kind of allowing myself to receive the things that we offer at the space. So I noticed that like I've been in LA now for most of the since May, away from the business. I've only taken like a couple trips, and when I'm here, I'm working out, I'm doing the things, but I do not consistently get in and do the breath work, the yoga, the cold plunge, the sauna. And I do realize when I'm at the space, and I'm just actually allowing myself to like receive those things, it really helps. So it's like, I guess I'm blessed and fortunate in the sense that like what my business is these things that are both that are not only for other people to experience this like nervous system regulation, but they're also my anchors too. And I realize when I go back to these and I really allow myself to like do the practices, do the modalities, and receive from them, that's really what like grounds me the most. And it not only like allows me to kind of like push through the challenges, but it keeps me inspired to keep going because I feel the difference within myself and I get to see it within the community that is part of our space. And that really just inspires me to keep going because I realize it makes a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, see the difference, be the difference, all of that. Tell me, because I'm listening, thinking, well, where is this in San Antonio? Like, I don't know. I know we have cold plunges and saunas, but I don't know that there's a place that's like, let's do breath work for 25 minutes before we go do these things. So, one, do you have like a whole network of things and you can tell us where we can go and find this amazing kind of work? And two, if not, how might people if we can't just go to Sayulita every week or LA, or do you have Alchemize House? Is it
Yeah.
in both places, LA and Sayulita?
We're working on expanding to LA right now. So we have been talking with some hospitality partners about doing like a partnership at some hotel locations, also at some like residencies. I guess to answer even the beginning part of your question is, I don't know San Antonio well, and without doing some research, I can't tell you that I know of a specific place, but I can almost guarantee you there is a place. This is happening the world over, and it's not just in New York City, LA, and Miami. This is happening in Denver and San Antonio and Sacramento. Like whatever city you can think of, there's probably a space that's starting to bring together these modalities. Everyone from like the big players in health and wellness, even like a great example is like Lifetime. Lifetime used to be called Lifetime Fitness, and now they're called Lifetime Athletic. And they're completely also looking at their business model, and they're not just a gym anymore. They have co-working aspects. They have all these recovery modalities and stuff like that. So everything from like the big players in the game that have been in the space for a long time are kind of adjusting and what am I trying to say? Evolving their models to bring in a lot of this stuff. And then there's a lot of young companies like us that are people that were maybe practitioners, health coaches, empowerment coaches, mindset coaches that really saw the power of breath work for themselves, and have started to open spaces around it. So I would say, if you wanted to find this, a Google search on San Antonio breathwork or San Antonio cold plunge sauna, you'd probably be able to find something. I'll definitely like do some research and send you whatever resources I can
Not
find.
trying to put you
And
to
then
work it,
as
just thinking, asking for, because I hear these things and I have a friend who moved to Virginia of all places, and she keeps citing these
Mhm.
amazing things. And I'm like, we don't have that here. I can't find that, right? So we just get envious of these places where y'all have
Yeah,
amazing things. But listen, if not, we can always just Wim Hof on our own, go jump in the cold plunge. We can like MacGyver this and pull some things together on our own. Um,
for sure.
Something else I wanted to ask you just about like as about on health in general, like because you are sort of like, yeah, I kind of had this kind of traditional, it just by default, I sort of gravitated toward this kind of health. And then there's sort of like some redefining. If you could, this might be a big question. If you could
Yeah.
redefine health for the world and not just as like this like set of habits or goals, and in that way, like where would you go to? Like what if somebody was like, define health for me, or what would you wish that people were picking up as the definition of health? What would you call? Where would your mind go?
That is a big question. Yeah, I think there's something that I keep coming back to, and I think it's like quite often missed in a lot of the way we think about fitness and health and wellness and stuff. And it comes back to relationships. Is like, I think that's one of the missing pillars that is often overlooked. Is like, you can be taking care of your body, you can be eating all the right food, you can be taking care of your mental health, going to therapy, doing meditation, and all that stuff. But if you don't have like quality relationships in your life, and close relationships through friends and family, partners, business partners, whatever it is, then it's kind of really all for naught, as far as I see it. So it's like the whole picture of health is something that looks at not just the physical health and the mental health, but it's also like, I think the other part, the other way I would answer that question is, you can talk about this in whether it's a way of diet or a way of training, is like, the best diet is the one that you can stick to, or the best form of training is the one that you can stick to. So I don't like to be like overly prescriptive with my clients about exactly what it is that they need to do. And when you say that you can stick to, that doesn't mean for 3 months or 6 months. It's like, you have to find the thing that you can be 80-20 consistent with for the next 10 years, the next 20 years, the next 30
Mm.
years, but also giving yourself grace and permission to let that evolve. So for me, that was CrossFit for a long time. I got a lot of good from CrossFit. I don't do it anymore. I allow myself to evolve, but it's like, you really do have to find something, both in terms of how you move your body, how you're tapping into your spiritual health, how you're eating, that is something that you can truly stick to with pretty solid consistency for a long, long time. And then relationships, you have to find ways to consistently be in deep connection with others. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will just say what was coming up for me when you were saying that is uh the way to, because I just hear people asking, or at least my brain, it's like, well, how do I find the thing that I can stick to consistently? And the answer, friends, is trial and error.
Yes.
You have to
Try
try
things.
it. You have to actually
Yeah.
try things. We love a good like silver bullet. We were talking about this earlier this morning. It's like, yeah, you don't get there until it's the magic sauce is trial and error. So, for those of you who are out there,
100%.
like, we have not found this 80-20 mix yet. Keep trying. We don't just give up. We
Yeah.
keep trying. Iterate, iterate, iterate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, Dana, before I ask you my very last question, please tell the listeners the best way to connect with you, the work that you're doing, how we can follow along with the journey of Alchemized House and learn about what y'all are doing out in the world.
Yeah. So our website is just alchemizehouse.com. On Instagram, we're Alchemize House. And those are probably the best two places to find us. We get a lot of compliments on the aesthetic of our Instagram. I'm very proud of my business partner who kind of leads the creative direction on that. But we try to have somewhat educational content on there, but also it's just a beautiful space, and so that's where you can kind of follow the journey. Yeah.
Amazing. That will go in the show notes. And then for my very last question, what does it mean to you to live an unblocked life?
Yeah, I think it's about, we've talked a lot about it through this, is like learning to kind of like sit in the discomfort. I think when we really want to achieve something in life, and if we want to live a life we're proud of and that we really love, it's going to require a lot of like challenging and uncomfortable things. And it's learning to push through the discomfort and sit with the discomfort. I think if you kind of like back off or don't pursue something because you start to feel a little bit of discomfort, that is what I would probably say is like to feel stuck.
Mhm.
And so learning to be able to sit in the discomfort and continue for quite often what is a lot longer than you would have hoped or anticipated. That's what it really, I think, really feels like to live an unblocked life.
I love that answer. And I am like giggling inside because literally just what I want to say is sometimes when we think of sitting in the discomfort, we think of like the spectrum of emotions that are like uh, insecurity, embarrassment, humiliation, rejection. Also, friends, sometimes the discomfort is the other side of like receiving and love and vulnerability. And I just had an image this weekend celebrating a beautiful friend. And after we sneakily got the check, she was like sitting there in tears and she's like, I am so mad right now. She's one that like you have to fight her to try to like be the one that gets to pay for dinner. And she's crying. She's like, I am so
Yeah.
mad right now. And I said, I think the feeling is actually loved. I think that's
Ooh.
uncomfortable, right? Like it's so uncomfortable
Yeah.
to sit on that receiving end sometimes. So I love your answer. And just for people listening, I just would invite sometimes that means sitting in the discomfort on all this places in the spectrum so that you can have what you want in life.
I think that's such a good point. I think that is something we often don't really think about. Like, yeah, like when I said discomfort, it's probably people are thinking of the things we talked about a lot on this, but really quite often it is feeling completely seen and allowing yourself to feel seen and be received, and or to receive the love and the adoration and the praise and the words of encouragement from people can be very challenging. I'm really glad you said that.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine that ties in. We didn't go down this path, but I have so many other questions about the relationship stuff. But that ties into connection, right?
Yeah.
And if health is about being in relationships, relationships are a give and take. And some of
Yeah.
us are really good at giving, some of us are really good at receiving, but a fulfilling, satisfying, gratifying relationship requires both, all of that. So, if you're looking for connection, also you're looking for vulnerability and being able to
Yeah.
receive praise, and that can be wildly uncomfortable. But we can do that. That's why you do the
Yeah.
cold plunge, because you're like, if I can sit through 2 minutes of cold plunge and not die one time, perhaps I can receive love. And then you're like, now we've arrived. Now we have that full health that Dana's telling
100%.
us about. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Dana. I appreciate your time and the work that you're doing in the world. We for sure all need more health and fulfilling relationships and connections to self and each other. So I appreciate you and the work you're doing out there.
Yeah, thank you. You too. These conversations are so valuable, and it really helps to for people to tap in and just be able to learn more about themselves and about the, like you said, trial and errors, like getting out there and just trying different things. That's how you're really going to find what works for you.
Preach. All right. Thank you again for joining us today. And thank you, Dana, for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.